Next, we have Andrei Demchenko, spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, joining us. Mr. Andrei, can we speak with you now? Yes. Welcome, Mr. Andrei.
Greetings to the studio.
Mr. Andrei, I would like to start with a traditional question, which I suppose is quite fitting for this morning slot. Could you please tell us how are things currently looking at the Russian-Ukrainian border, the Russian-Belarusian border, and the Ukrainian-Belarusian border regions at this moment?
Well, these are two different directions with different situations, because along the border with Belarus, there aren't really any unusual situations or what we've observed before, that there was some buildup of forces on the Belarusian side near our border. This is not being observed now. Likewise, there are no attacks on Ukrainian territory coming from Belarusian territory. The border with Russia is a completely different situation. There are daily attacks both in the Chernihiv region, in the Sumy region, and in the Kharkiv region. And in certain directions, the enemy continues to show activity, trying to attack the positions of our soldiers, attempting to probe sections of the border in order to later intensify their offensive actions and advance deeper into the territory of our country. But again, in the defensive sectors where units of the State Border Guard Service are located, and especially in those most active and most threatening directions where the enemy has recently been trying to attack our positions and our soldiers to advance deeper into the territory of our country, the enemy is unable to do so and instead suffers heavy losses.
Mr. Andrei, if I may ask you, can we single out a particularly difficult section along the Ukrainian-Russian border? Well, of course, I mean this specifically from a security point of view.
Well, these are the borders, if we talk about the Kharkiv region, the borders of the Vovchansk community, because this includes the direction of the settlement Vovchansky Khutori, where small enemy infantry groups continue to make attempts to advance. This also includes the direction of the settlement of Dityarne and the direction of the settlement of Rybalkain. All of these are also within the borders of the Vovchansk community. But again, on these last two directions near this settlement, the enemy is probing our defensive capabilities directly along the border, trying to break through the border and further expand their actions to advance. In Sumy region, these are the borders of the Khotin and Yunakivka communities traditionally, where again the enemy is most active in their attempts to advance, trying to come up with various tricks in order to seize more territory and get behind our soldiers. But again, both within Kharkiv region and within Sumy region, the enemy's losses are quite significant. But we see that, unfortunately, the enemy does not care about their own people and continues to drive them into these meat grinder assaults. And their objective is the same, to advance at any cost.
Mr. Andrei, again, to the extent that this is open information for disclosure, may I ask how far the gray zone extends into the territory of the Russian Federation along the border?
Well, understand that we detect the enemy not only directly at the border. Our guys are actively working using various types of unmanned aerial vehicles to respond in a timely manner to any enemy actions attempting to approach our border, of course, on Russian territory, as well as to detect enemy positions and means of attack that the enemy uses to shell our territory. And of course, the identification and detection of a wide variety of armored combat vehicles and various other types of military transport equipment in order to effectively strike and completely neutralize them and not allow the enemy to establish any form of reliable or effective logistical supply lines, or set up fortified shelters where they could safely amass their personnel. And this work is done every day, and here we must give credit to every Ukrainian soldier who carries it out. Because in fact the border with Russia, both within the Sumy region, Kharkiv region, and Chernihiv region, is quite an extensive area that we have to control and constantly monitor, since the enemy is, well, insidious, and in reality the border with Russia is essentially a front line, in some places with active combat, in others without.
The defense forces are conducting assault operations in the Zaporizhia and Oleksandrivka directions. This was stated by Commander-in-Chief Syrsky. However, he did not disclose further details of the operation. TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko also notes that our troops have begun to move forward. She is currently working in the Zaporizhzhia region, and you can watch her report on how intense it is now on the front line coming up next. In the report, you will also see a fundraiser for the needs of the 148th Artillery Brigade. So you can join in to support the unit.
A trip to the red zone usually has to be very carefully planned. At the very least, it should be a more protected one. A vehicle. Today we have a Humvee, plus some extra gadgets like drone detectors. Enemy attack drones are currently in the air. In fact, we are in the Zaporizhzhia direction. This is where the most active fighting is happening right now. Our driver Victor, who is taking us closer to the front line, isn't very talkative, but he's extremely focused. After all, he has to keep an eye not only on the road, but also on the sky above us. We constantly receive alerts that enemy drones are in our sector, so we're forced to stop and wait them out. Fly over. The soldiers are not surprised that the sky is filled with enemy drones, as these UAVs are actively searching for their self-propelled unit. This is the French Caesar self-propelled howitzer, a 155mm system. It was one of the first to be provided to the Ukrainian military by foreign partners, and back in 2022, its current commander, with the call sign Dioma, began his training on it in France.
There they explained everything, showed us the gun, everything was beautiful, just as it should be, with paved walkways and all that. And then you go out to the training range, checks firing practice, everything hit the target, everything was good. But then when we got here, there were some nuances that they hadn't explained to us, things we only learned about here. And we tried, as they say, its full power when firing at the IBK 18 shells. It performed quite well.
Since then, I've gone through more than one section of the front with it, and now Caesar is helping the defense forces change the situation in the Zaporizhzhia direction. This week, foreign observers and military analysts have been discussing the counter-offensive near Zaporizhzhia. Defense forces haven't officially commented, although recently the Center for Countering Disinformation reported that Ukraine liberated the village of Ternuvate. But the soldiers here on the front line still prefer to maintain radio silence, at least until there are more obvious successes, they say. But the cannon fire seems to hint at something. Our troops are indeed advancing. Even the artillerymen themselves admit there's more work now. There's much more to do nowadays.
We go out more, we fire more, we strike more targets, and we destroy more of the hostile enemy.
But the enemy is also trying to regain what they've lost. But first, they want to locate the self-propelled artillery to silence it. And they do this with their attack drones.
Move all the way under the trees.
Unfortunately, we didn't have time, as usual, after the self-propelled gunfires to leave the firing position, because the Russian drone Molnya was already in the sky. There is a strong possibility that he has already detected our operations here, and in fact, we are now forced to take cover under the trees and wait for this drone to fly by. Hope he doesn't notice us. Always an explosion on the horizon. Target is in French, Caesar.
When the lightning strike was finally revealed, the most striking thing that was found to be extraordinarily similar to Gerber was specifically the systematic suppression of the inclusion that occurred throughout the entire process. Suffocated and disappeared from the radar.
So Caesar goes to shelter as quickly as possible, once the account prepares him for further work. After all, a French car likes to stay well-groomed, jokes Sergei.
There are a lot of sensors here, they always need to be kept clean.
Not so long ago, Sergei was still firing an 82mm caliber mortar in another unit. Until it was destroyed. Russian drones.
On my record, there have already been 3 of them that no longer have a mortar. The war is changing. The drones are very close to the front line. Well, that's just how it is now. Simply stepping out of the shelter and doing anything at all is already a luxury. There are little things there, like from the old days.
So he approves of the Ministry of Defense and General Staff's plans to stop using mortars, specifically the small 82mm ones. Especially since he himself has experienced what it's like to work with long-range guns.
I've always dreamed of big calibers, so that when you hit, you really hit. As you saw, even the pine needles.
Their entire bodies were visibly shaking and trembling with an uncontrollable intensity that was hard to ignore.